Thank you, Ron. So I've mentioned before that I went to camp growing up. It was in New Hampshire on the shores of a lake at the foot of a little mountain. It was so different than the concrete and noisy city I grew up in. I've been thinking a lot about camp, though it's far too early for my typical annual camp dream. But I think it's because being cooped up inside is making even my not so very outdoorsy heart long for forests and mountains and lakes with muddy bottoms and anything to break the monotony of now. It makes sense that I would long for sunshine and fresh air in this moment, but I realized this week that it goes a bit deeper as well. Camp was a community. For 2 months out of the year, it was a special kind of community, isolated from the outside world, not always exactly the same. Though many other campers came back year after year as I did, counselors came and went. The exact constituent parts of the community shifted summer to summer, but the rhythms and the expectations, the ethos of the community was cultivated year over year. Certain things remained. One of the lessons of my camp community was exactly that community building matters and must be intentional, and that it happens through the building of trust, through mutual caretaking, through a sort of team mentality. From simple things like morning inspections, where a cabin was rated on its cleanliness, not each individual, but the whole cabin together. You rose and fell as one, to more complicated things like the ropes courses we participated in. I don't know if any of you have ever done a ropes course. Maybe some of you have had to for team building with work. It can mean different things. It might literally mean traipsing along zip lines and tightrope walks while hooked to carabiners and ropes that keep you safe many, many feet off the ground. Or it might be a little more grounded, with trust falls or exercises of getting the entire team from one side of a log to another with a complex set of rules at play that make that work impossible without careful and thoughtful collective action. The ropes courses challenged me. I was a kind of a big girl, and trust falling into the arms of a bunch of other 10-year-old girls didn't feel that safe. I was not about to get up onto the ropes in the trees and trust a harness system. I don't mind being up high if I'm safely in a building or an otherwise fully supported enclosed space. But ropes courses really did test my trust, but they also built my trust. They were an integral part of the creation of layers of community. That's what the leaders at my camp understood. There were layers of our community. There was your cabin, then your immediate age group, then your section of camp, and then the whole camp body as one. Activities were designed to cultivate community intentionally at every layer. Earlier this year, I talked about something similar when I spoke to you all about Paula Cole Jones' vision of communities of communities. This idea that our congregations are not singular entities, but layers, circles of groups. The small group ministries, the committees or teams, the folks who come to the poetry Zoom room, those who work on social justice, and so on and so on. Just as here at the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood, we have so many communities within our community, so too each of us has this beyond our walls as well. Each of us belongs to layers of community, the people we do yoga with, our book group, our family, the neighbors, our kids, friends, families, and so on and so on. We have so many different layers to our community experiences, so many different places in which we move and from which we draw strength. Many of those are hyper-local, but in the world of increasing technology, we have access to more global circles as well. And as Unitarian Universalists, no matter how hyperlocal or global our communities are, we share a foundational belief that we are all part of an interdependent web of existence, that we all belong to the same human family, that we are more the same than we are different, that we celebrate and embrace those differences too. We believe in a shared humanity and a shared future. So whatever your circles, whatever your communities, Ultimately, you and I, we all belong to the same one, the community of all being. I honestly can't remember when I learned first what a murmuration is. If you've never seen one on film, you're going to get to right now. Essentially, the term murmuration is used for this phenomenon of starlings flying together in the hundreds or even thousands. They fly together as one body in intricate and swooping, weaving in and out of each other's paths as if they were choreographed to dance together on the air. They do this because there is safety in numbers. Falcons and other predators find it difficult to pick off one bird from a flock moving as one like this. It's also an opportunity to share information about good feeding areas, and it's a way to be warm. But what's amazing is how they manage this. This flight isn't choreographed. It is a dynamic and ever-changing dance based on instinct, but also on a small but vital strategy. A study from 2013 conducted by George F. Young and some colleagues expands on our understanding of starling strategy by determining that starlings optimize their cohesion and thus their safety by paying attention to their nearest 6 or 7 neighbors. So starlings don't learn one part in the murmuration dance and perform it forever. Fly and swoop and dive in response to the nearest 7 starlings. You can imagine maybe one group of 7 birds paying attention to each other, pacing to and moving with each other at the front, and then radiating out. Birds in the hundreds or thousands responding to those movements. Participation in a small community of 7, not fully isolated groups of 7, allows participation in a much larger whole, and that much larger whole keeps them safe and secure. The uncertainty and chaos of finding food, hiding from predators, whatever the circumstances might be, starlings are able to create cohesion by attending to small groups that are part of a vast collective. This is what we are called to do in this time. We're called to understand that building systems and structures of care on the local level is a path toward greater wholeness for us all, especially in a time when our national government pays little heed to the health and safety of all, and instead would sacrifice our lives on the altars of greed and capitalism and productivity. We are called in all the ways we can to care for those around us. We can create networks of care. This is what congregations have always done and will always do. But we can do this in our towns, on our streets, in all our local circles. We can work to create the means to care for each other. Pooled resources, systems of communication so that we know what others need and we can express our own needs. A commitment to check in on each other. Imagine 7 people. We're working on that, by the way, an old phone tree type of situation. We can be like starlings in this way, tuned into the whole and keep each other safe and sound. And even as we do, we never forget that larger body of which we are a part. We know the value of the hyper-local, so encourage each other to this kind of attention to neighbor and family, because this layer of community building creates the foundation that helps keep that larger community one. Understand that our health and wholeness is bound together, that our liberation, our freedom, our salvation is bound together. And I don't mean salvation in the next life. I mean salvation right here and now. We Unitarian Universalists believe in the capacity of humanity to build a heaven on earth right here for all of us. And so we're called to build the systems and structures right now among our local communities and then in circles ever widening so that the entirety of humanity might thrive. This means that even as we go local, we also pay attention to what is happening beyond our 7. We think about how this moment is affecting others economically, We think about the emotional and spiritual toll on those frontline folks. We think about the prison population and immigrants and all the different ways this moment will impact the marginalized and those who were already struggling to get by. We think outwardly facing in this way, not because we want to exhaust ourselves with sorrow, but because we understand that we really can't do anything less, not when we are part of a whole. That seven, our seven closest starlings, will give us strength and courage and solace and sustenance. Our families and friends and the relationships that sustain us will feed us and care for us so that we can keep on working to build a larger world where all are cared for. I said recently in a gathering of colleagues that my biggest fear right now is that we will come out of this strange moment in the history of the world. We won't change anything. That we'll come out of this and go right back to old habits, back to serving old values. My fear is that we will squander this moment, possibility for change, and that when we are allowed back into the sunshine and fresh air and autonomy we have known for decades in this country, that we will forget the lessons learned. That is my greatest fear. I don't long to go back to the way things were. I long for us to see a way clear to a future that attends more convincingly and committedly to our whole human family and privileges communities, lives, safety, health, and a deep sense of oneness. There is a real cost, an economic one to be sure, but also a spiritual one, a kind of soul cost to having our lives altered so drastically in just an instant. We're still coming to terms with it, what this moment means for our hearts and souls, what it will come to mean as we are forced to grieve in new ways and live in new ways. But there is also such a real and vital possibility in this time. A possibility to make something different and new and better out of this collective trauma we're facing. I do not believe that suffering is inherently valuable. My theology of suffering doesn't teach me that we humans deserve punishment for sin. I believe in a theology of suffering that says suffering happens, it's real, and what matters is what you make of it. What matters is how you grieve, how you let yourself feel, how you let yourself learn, and how you change what can be changed. What matters is what we will create on the other side of this liminal moment. What matters is what we will build together. It has been over 2 decades since I last went to camp. And over the years, I've worked hard on my capacity to trust, on my willingness to fall and to fail, to believe in the systems and structures and relationships that will catch me, catch all of us. I've learned over and over that the systems and structures and relationships are only as strong as the commitment I make to them, to build them and better them and tend them over time. I know this moment is scary, and perhaps you share my deepest fear, or perhaps your fears are different. It is a strange and wearying and scary time. I want to affirm that truth. But I also want to affirm another deep and universal truth, that we are one human family sharing in a common future, entwined in ways we still don't understand. If we could each but live that way every day, what a world we would make. So let's try. Let's be a murmuration, loving and caring for those nearest us, participating in the creation of a beautiful, dancing, magical flight that brings along all of us. There are parliaments of owls, prides of lions, pods of whales. Let's be a loving murmuration of Unitarian Universalists. Beautiful, joyful, attentive, dynamic, responsive, and building trust and safety and love for the whole of our human family. May it be so.